Welcome to the Rebuild Procurement Podcast, the number one podcast in the world where we dive deep into topics to keep procurement people up to date and ahead of their peers. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pod Pocket, all of them, whether you like this or not. On today's episode, Alan, this is going to be part one of a 4-part series. We go through our 3 most important focuses for procurement and sourcing teams. And also, Alan, before we get to that, corporate espionage. We're going to go in 2 main suppliers to a lot of companies. There's allegations, they're alleged. We're going to talk through those. I'm Tom Finn, bringing 15 years on the client side, procurement, finance, and category management experience in large and small cap orgs.
And I'm Alan Veek, a procurement geek on the sell side of the street, and I guess it's like 30 years. I'm W, Tom, and I've assembled a team of superhuman procurement professionals doing managed services at a little company we call Summit.
Little company and the big chain.
It's awesome.
All right, Alan. Are you familiar with Deal, Alan? Do you know this company, DEEL, Deal?
Deal, yes, I think so. They're in the HR kind of people management space.
Yeah, they you can hire anybody from anywhere. They're the company that a lot of folks go to if you need hiring out of your general common countries, maybe like Europe and US. Oh. A lot of folks will go international, use Deal, and they could do local US as well. So they're valued right now at $12 billion. And
12 Bs.
12 Bs, yeah, just a HR, recruiting, payroll type company. But a company that was using them is kind of in their space. Are you familiar with Rippling, Alan?
Yes, yeah, they market hard. I see them on LinkedIn all the time. They somehow made it into my inbox. Yeah, they're a big deal, Rippling.
Yeah. So are you familiar with corporate espionage, Alan?
Ooh, I think I've heard about this.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, just yesterday I saw it on X first, and then I just read the actual blog post because everyone goes everywhere and makes their own just stories about it. But I just went straight to the source. And Deal put it on their website, Rippling put it on their website. They claim that Deal cultivated a corporate spy within Rippling's employee base. So this isn't even them hiring somebody. Yeah, they had a mole. So this is pretty wild. They found it because they had obsessive searching in Rippling Slack channels. So they actually were searching for the name Deal. I'm not even sure what they were trying to do because they're not outright competitors. They're kind of like one's a software and one's like
there's a service
resource
kind of a service. Yeah, and I think Deal wants to be a software company because so we've full disclosure, we looked at both of these guys within the last 3 months. We're looking at HR. What do they call it? HRIS.
Yeah,
Human Resources Information Systems. Yeah, so we're looking at kind of the whole industry. So we talked to Rippling. They still just email us a bunch. We talked to Deal. We talked to a couple others, Bamboo HR. Eddy is our current HR platform, which I think after this it's not quite an RFP that we ran, but kind of looking at everything, I think we're going to stick with Eddy. Eddy's good for us right now. Rippling Rippling, interestingly, seemed like it should be the best, and it was good. But there were surprising holes in their solution. It was shocking to me that they weren't more well developed. And then Deal showed really well, but we were kind of warned, hey, be careful. They show well, but then when you plug it in and you implement it, it doesn't do so much.
Yeah, they could kind of go really far for you, but then maybe not as deep. I think it would probably maybe something that a lot of folks would say about Deal. But they have far reach, and then Rippling, they've just been up and comers in the space probably for the past 5 years. But just in a weird, so I guess they're outright competitors at this point. And there was Rippling claimed, this is all allegations, right? I'm looking at a post on their website, but allegations that they have conclusively proved that Deal's senior leadership orchestrated this illegal activity. How Rippling found it, they had this honeypot scenario. They made this, they made a Slack channel. And if anyone's ever used Slack, it can just it can get toxic. It could be great. But it also people speak way more than things that they would generally expect. So they had this Slack channel called defectors, and then most likely, I'm assuming that means that folks that were considering moving away from rippling, and they were probably Deal was probably trying to figure out who those companies were to then pitch them. That's kind of the way I read it. Could be wrong, but that's the way I read it. So, but essentially, they had put this mole. They put this.
Did you say Reddit? Did you say Reddit, Tom?
No. Deal. They read it. Yeah, they read it. But there's a great source of information. I'm sure there's probably a lot of talk on Reddit about this. But essentially, this person was searching like 23 times per day for the word deal in these Slack channels, and that's kind of how they found it out.
Yes.
So pretty wild. It's one of those things. Initially, when I read it, I was like, oh, they're using one of their like outside resources, but no, they actually compromised, which is pretty wild to even think through. But they compromised a rippling employee to be able to give them, this information and do this for them.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing that you wonder to yourself, okay, if this is the one that we hear about, if this one's been figured out and caught, how many do we not hear about? How many do we not know about, right? Like there's probably a lot of this that goes on out there, especially with bigger companies. I think SaaS is kind of shark infested waters, the software as a service industry. And it strikes me, because they're all so sales focused. You tend to get the leadership tends to be kind of software sales people. It's this mindset of win at all costs.
Yeah, when they give VC money. Yeah, when they give VC money, they turn more into it, right? Because then you're responsible, and then you have all these outside pressures that lead to probably even potentially more toxic behavior. In this case, I mean, it's like super toxic, like it's illegal, right? You can't do that.
No.
So they could be in big trouble. Again, all allegations. But I saw it and I was like, gosh darn, this is one that folks should generally keep an eye on, right? This is like, it's not even secrets. It's not them trying to steal the Coca-Cola formula. It's them probably trying to figure out who they can go after next that might be defecting from rippling or, and it gives them an opportunity for who to sell to. But pretty wild.
Pretty wild. So you think I need to get, by the way, I'm advertising Summit hard today. This is one of my team members has an awesome 3D printer, and he's always making me swag.
Was that like a 10-inch Summit Procurement chain?
It is, and he said the next one he's going to build, this can spin. The internal logo can spin. He said it's like
a little Flava Flav.
Spin it around.
Yeah, Flava Flav. You got to start. You have to have your own version of Flava Flav.
Oh my gosh! So so what you're saying is at Summit Procurement, I need to consider Polygraph for all my team members.
Yeah, there you go, exactly.
Who's put them all inside Summit Procurement?
He's got to be careful. You got to be careful. Check them on the inside. Like, are you working for any competitors?
Oh my gosh! Yes,
but yeah,
that's hilarious.
So I don't know. I was shocked. I always lean towards folks, generally speaking, are good people, but definitely people could be compromised, and you would assume that the same thing happens just even at their exec level. Like folks, incentives drive outcomes, and also the way you act. They might not be bad people, but they might be good people doing a bad thing too.
Yeah, it's easy to get close to the line and maybe cross over the line. So yeah, that's for sure. That's difficult.
All allegations, but one to share for a up and comer supplier.
Excitement in a rather boring space.
Contingent workforce management.
Oh my word.
HR.
Yeah. So I was reading a few articles this week, and I came across one from an old employer. McKinsey is kind of known as a strategy firm, big global management consultancy. But they're also, certainly where I got my start at McKinsey in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a part of the Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh triumvirate that was really focused on, because this is as is said about Pittsburgh, it's the buckle in the Rust Belt. We're kind of like the middle. Yeah, we're the belt buckle and the Rust Belt. We had a big operations practice focused on manufacturing and supply chain logistics, and that's where I got my start in procurement. Was actually with McKinsey. And so I stay tied into everything that they have to say about procurement. They came out with an interesting article. This was end of February, called Procurement 2025. And anytime I get something like this, it's like bait. It's like, I got to go read that. They're proclaiming something big.
You click. You're the what are those like? The gas stations? They have like the ones like pop culture stuff. If you're on the internet, it's
Yes.
like you click good headlines, you're a headline guy. And
Oh my
dive in.
gosh, yes. I'm in. They had me.
Sucked you
Procurement
in, yeah.
2025. So it's interesting, not rebuilding the function for success, but reimagining. So that's pretty good.
Sounds like a
I think
ripoff.
we're on the.
Sounds like a ripoff.
It does. They've been listening to the show, but I'll certainly give them a shout out. It's 5 different partners that actually put together this video. If you're not into reading, don't worry. It's just a transcript that you're reading of the video. You can come to this, go to this link. If you search Procurement 2025 McKinsey, you'll get this link. Maybe Brandon will put it in the show notes. But it's a very interesting article that talks about kind of the things they think are going to be most important this year for procurement, but in general in the next 3 to 5 years. And it got me sitting down and thinking. And then you and I had a really good conversation yesterday where we said, what do we think the big things for the next 3 to 5 years to focus on in procurement are? So do you want to read our list, Tom? I think it's a good list.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one we were talking through, Alan, was procurement transformation, right? Just how things will change specifically over the next 5 years. I mean, a lot of these stay consistent over time. So procurement transformation, then strategic category management. So moving from the tactical to the strategic side of things, getting work off the plate of, the category manager or the to-be category manager, and then stakeholder experience. We've talked about like the different firms, different companies that provide intake, right? What makes stakeholders willing to bring the spend to you? So those are the 3 things we were chatting about.
Yeah, I love that lineup. I think to me that's everything. The 3 elements really take care of a specific set of things that procurement needs to think about. So if you think about the first one, transformation, this basically talks about operating model. If you picture procurement as a machine, how do we build the machine to be able to get the most efficient and effective throughput? That's what I think of when I think of transformation. Is you're thinking about the operating model, you're thinking about your team, you're thinking about your skill sets, you're thinking about your technology systems, your platforms. It's kind of like everything I need to do that if I get a gob of spend, how am I going to churn through that spend in the most efficient and effective way possible?
Yeah, and also how does that change over time too, right? Like everyone's all hot to trot still on AI. How does that actually affect you? Like what should transform within your group, within your teams, within your company? A lot of times, like just just the different softwares, right? Like just talking about Deal and Rippling, like those are still 2 of the companies that are well known that are doing stuff different. How do those types of companies get incorporated into your company?
Bingo. Yeah, that's exactly right. So that first one is really all about building the machine. The second one's about building the brain. Category management, I really think of as the brain of procurement. It is how are we strategically going to handle every dollar we spend in the most effective way possible. And that means heavy touch for the biggest dollars, light touch for the smallest dollars, decently heavy touch for the riskiest dollars, light touch for the lowest risk dollars. The category manager, we oftentimes talk about the category management playbook. If you are a category manager for $200 million worth of transportation spend, you need to sit down and think very strategically about how are we going to spend every one of these $200 million? What are we going to touch in a heavy way? What are we going to touch lightly? And you kind of, the category manager is the conductor that says, here's how we're going to manage all this stuff. And it determines which channels of that machine, of the procurement transformation, the operating model, determines which channels of the machine get used. So I really think of the second piece, the category management piece, and taking it from tactical to strategic. It's really all about how are we going to manage each of these dollars.
Yeah, and it rolls right through with the transformation, right? How do you, if you are going to, you want to operationalize the operations and you want to separate out and start thinking through some of your bigger areas of spend, because just to use logistics as your point, there's also like the risks associated with it that drive essentially the outcome of what the price is going to be to your end customer. They really do have downstream impacts that have to be weighed and understood and, mitigated.
Yeah, for sure. And the third piece is kind of cool too, because how do you get the $200 million of spend out of your transportation team in the first place? They're the ones who own that budget. They're the ones who own that spend. The only way you're going to get them to bring that to you and put it at your feet is if you have an easy way for them to interact with you. If they have an overused term, if they have an Amazon-like experience, Amazon shopping-like experience where they can buy goods and services with the least amount of friction. And that's really what that last piece is around stakeholder satisfaction, around a good intake process. You just want to have zero friction. You want to have people know, hey, I got to take this spend to Alan. He can do something good with it. He's the category manager. And you got to have an easy way for them to put that into the system. And luckily, in the last 10 years, there's been just a proliferation of tools, of solutions that make this so much easier than it ever used to be.
Yeah, it always, and this isn't just procurement, but a lot of orgs, a lot of people kind of lean towards, let me just make this complicated so I'm super important. But then you end up missing out on so much that it could really show your value too, with tying different folks together, like you're saying, through that proper intake, not even just software, but just the intake experience, let's say, right? How they bring it to you. And then there's also, this isn't a friction piece, but like the what's done and what the value is on the output, right? If they have an easy Amazon-like intake experience, but output is a McKinsey-esque, you're solving problems and
12 slides.
Making it better. Yeah, making it better in some cases, depending on your stakeholders. Then there's that piece as well, where they see the value too. Seeing the value is also important, not just for it being easy.
Yeah, it is like any of the things that we do as customers. We want a frictionless experience. We want things to be easy. You can think in your mind's eye of a bad customer service experience that you've had recently and how you could tell a story about it. You're like, oh, first this happened, then that happened. And can you believe this? Like, why did this happen? How did this ever get so screwed up? Everybody's got customer service experiences like that. And then once in a blue moon, you get the customer service experience that blows you away, that you say, wow, I walked into the restaurant. They knew my name when I walked through there. They held the door for me. My table was ready. They had my favorite cocktail sitting there waiting for me. That sort of thing, that comes up straight out of a book that I read recently called Unreasonable Hospitality. It was all about the number one ranked restaurant in the world, 11 Madison in New York. It was ranked like 10 years ago, number one restaurant in the world. And they literally did that. He said, why do we have two maitre d's staring you down behind a pillbox, like it's like you're coming in to do war? Why don't they greet you at the door with your name and have your favorite cocktail ready to go for you? And he did that and called it unreasonable hospitality. But we need to think inside procurement with that mindset of unreasonable hospitality. I always like to say we are a service function to our organization. Doesn't mean that we are servants to them, but we need to have this mindset of customer service.
Yeah, I remember I used to go to and this is a lot of people go to like a coffee shop every day to go pick up a coffee. Northeast, Dunkin' Donuts is super popular, and you could just drive to it on your way to work. And it was always great when you go in, and I mean, this is Dunkin' Donuts. This isn't the unreasonable hospitality, but they're like, all right, and they have exactly what you want. And sometimes like, I was actually going to change, but I just appreciate that you made that for me. And yes, I'll just take that. Thank you. Like, I appreciate your effort and looking forward and knowing me. I mean, a lot of folks feel that when those experiences happen, and you really don't think about it much throughout business. And like, essentially you are a service function that has to drive value and show that output. But, people like to understand what's going on and receive that service level.
Yeah. So those, I think those three are incredibly important, powerful ones. Do you have a favorite of the three, Tom?
Do I have a favorite of the three? I'm always a big fan of the category management side of things.
You and me both.
Yeah, I mean, I like P&L impact. I'd lie if I said I didn't. Right, to the extent you, I think a lot starts with just a dollar amount. I think that the procurement function, strategic sourcing function, starts in people's mind with how much are you saving me, right? So there's always this like lead with savings. I had this boss a while back. She's like, Tom, all that's important, whatever, like number of this and, touch points that and blah, 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 blah. But we always lead with savings. So I was like, okay, we always lead with savings. And that's kind of been in my mind, and it's served me well too, right? Like, to the extent you're going to speak about something and at least acknowledge the dollar saved first. And then everyone's like, okay, like understands, he understands, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's interesting. I love that you highlight that, because there's a certain, I think it's a countercultural trend inside procurement where everybody says, well, don't lead with savings. We're so much more than savings. We bring so much more value than just savings. However, how many salespeople on the other side of your organization don't lead with the size of their deal, right? That's what
sure.
they talk about. They talk about the revenue that they brought in.
Yeah, it's not turnaround time. It's not like, sure, okay, but if you did it in a day and it's $100, I prefer a month and $1 million, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, it is interesting. I agree with you. I think we need to lead with savings because the savings is always there. I've worked in a lot of different functions before, and this is the killer feature of procurement, is that the money is there. The number one most important thing to a business is revenue. Second most important thing is cost. Those two things are primary. You look at a business, it's made up of revenues and costs. And so we've got our hands on the second biggest lever inside any organization with the cost side that procurement can just influence, an outsized influence on.
Yeah, and the positioning, you just always want to think about what people think about you in these contexts, right? Of a department or an employee or whatever your role is. It's like, what do you want to be thought of first? It's like, oh, those folks are saving money. Good. Next, right? Like,
yes,
you kind of want that. You don't want to be, oh, they're like nice and whatever. This is great, but that's not the business mindset that you want folks to grade you on. You want to grade you on outcome, and the outcome, and like it or not, the outcome in many people's mind that they want out of procurement function and why they hire folks is to pay less for things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so the first of our big three talks about how to do that more efficiently. The second talks about how to do it strategically. The third talks about how to make the stakeholder, make the person who's got the budget, who's coming to procurement, make them feel good about it, make them feel overall good about coming to procurement.
For sure. Yeah, and then there's in the transformation side, there is definitely that could tie quite well into the experience of folks in that number 3. And it is kind of just like revisiting how you do it. And I wouldn't care if you're the CFO, CPO, or analyst, right? Or category manager. You have input to that. To the extent that folks start caring, and then the leadership team understands that there might be a better way, like in majority of organizations, they want to hear certain feedback, right? Some don't, and you probably know if you're there, but a lot do want to do things better and overall spend less and find different ways to serve.
Yep, I like that. So, I think when you and I spoke about this yesterday, we said, let's, why don't we do a deep dive into each one of these areas? So maybe rather than dive in deep right now, why don't we do a little series here? So this will be the first of 4. This is the introduction to the top 3, and then we'll do a 3-week series. We'll just take each of these one at a time. We'll start next week, perhaps with maybe we'll throw everyone a curveball. We'll surprise you. Maybe we'll come up. Maybe we'll start.
Maybe you got to click and listen.
Yes, exactly. So, but we'll have a guest on. Maybe we'll have a kind of a talking head come in and talk about this each week as we try and really dig into each one of these. But I think a focus on this really gives our listeners a roadmap. We talk about making you smarter than your peers. That's the whole idea here. You've got to have a strategic thought about, okay, how am I going to make this function I work in? How am I going to make procurement better? These are 3 things for you to focus on. And each one of these has sub-bullets that you could dig into. But if you focus on these 3 things and you really get to it, then I think you're going to find over the course of time, you're going to have a better procurement function, better outcomes. You're going to look like a champ, and everybody's going to be beating down the door to hire you to come transform their procurement organization.
For sure. It's exciting stuff. This is the type of stuff I think when we talked about initially, Alan, like the rebuild side, rethinking, reimagining, whatever you want to tack onto it. I think this is the idea, right? We want to kind of like, what can things be done better, right? How can things be done differently? Every day is changing right now, and it's going to change slower than a lot of people want, or a lot of people think, but it's still changing every day. And this is like pre-AI stuff, right? Every 5 years, there's new technology disrupting whatever. There's different ways to do it. There's different supply chain risks. Things always need to be thought through, and folks need to be nimble. And this is a way to continue that thought process for folks in the procurement space.
Good. All right, Tom, let's wrap it. On behalf of your humble hosts here at Rebuild Procurement Podcast, we are the procurement prophet, Tom Finn, and still the humble beard. It's I can't get anyone to shave this thing off, so I'm just too lazy to do it myself. I'm Alan Veek, hoping you will make this a powerful and productive week in procurement. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Show me, and you won't hear the word rebuild.